The man nobody recognized's sun was high above the coastline, casting golden light across the gentle waves. A luxury cruise ship, as tall as a 10-story building and polished like a diamond, glided silently through the blue water. It was called the Ocean Spirit. It carried some of the wealthiest people in the world: celebrities, politicians, business moguls. On the top deck, champagne flowed like water and laughter echoed from every corner. But none of them knew that something unforgettable was about to happen among the guests. Dressed in custom suits and silk gowns was a man in faded jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and worn sneakers. He stood quietly by the railing, looking out at the sea. His face was peaceful, thoughtful. Nobody recognized him. He didn't care. He was used to blending in. His name was Keanu Reeves. He didn't come for the party. He wasn't looking for attention. He was simply there to clear his mind, to take a breath from the noisy world. Life had been loud lately: movies, interviews, flights, fans, and loss. He had learned long ago that silence could be more healing than applause. Keanu had paid for his ticket like everyone else, not using his fame. He didn't want special treatment. He booked a modest cabin. He walked quietly through the halls. And even on the VIP deck, where billionaires compared watches and ladies, flaunted handbags worth more than cars, he didn't ask for anything. But some people notice others for all the wrong reasons. She came walking in like she owned the sea itself. Tall heels, gold jewelry, a white dress that shimmered like snow under the sun. Everyone turned to look at her, and she liked it. Her name was Marlene Carter. She was the widow of a tech billionaire, and now she moved through life like a queen. Marlene's voice was sharp and loud, her laugh louder. She loved to remind people of her status, her influence, her power. And when her eyes landed on the quiet man leaning on the railing, wearing clothes that looked like they belonged to a waiter, her smile twisted into a sneer. "Excuse me," she said with her nose in the air, walking right up to him. "This deck is for VIP guests only." Keanu turned to her slowly. His eyes were kind. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just looked calm. "I know," he said softly. Marlene narrowed her eyes. "Do you work here or something?" Keanu shook his head. "No, I'm just enjoying the view." Marlene crossed her arms. "Then you must be lost. Or maybe someone let you up here by mistake." A few heads turned. A small group of wealthy passengers began whispering and watching. Keanu didn't react. He simply nodded, as if he understood her confusion. "I'm not lost," he said, "but if my presence bothers you, I'll move." He began to step away from the railing. But something in his calmness only made her angrier. To her, it felt like disrespect. She was used to people apologizing, rushing to please her. But this man, this nobody in cheap shoes, was too calm, too composed. "Wait," she said, her voice colder now. "I don't think you belong here at all." Keanu stopped walking. "I do," he said again, politely. "But it's okay. I don't need the view." He turned to go, but Marlene suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm. "Don't lie to me," she snapped. "You're probably one of those people who sneak into VIP areas hoping for leftovers or free drinks." His arm slipped gently out of her grip, no force. "Just grace. I didn't sneak in," he said softly. "I was invited." A waiter nearby, holding a tray of glasses, froze. He looked at Keanu. His eyes widened slightly. He recognized him. But he didn't say a word. The other guests didn't seem to notice. "Invited?" Marlene laughed. "By who?" Keanu tilted his head thoughtfully, then shrugged. "Someone who believed in kindness." That was the moment Marlene lost it. With sudden rage, she stepped forward and pushed him toward the edge of the deck. It wasn't a hard push, just a firm shove meant to humiliate, meant to make a point, meant to remind him who had power here. But Keanu didn't stumble. He simply took a step back, maintaining perfect balance. He looked at her again, eyes full of something deeper than anger, disappointment. Before anyone could speak, a deep voice rang through the deck. "What do you think you're doing?" Everyone turned. A tall man in a navy uniform was standing near the entrance to the deck. His face was serious. His voice commanded attention. It was Captain Marcus Elliot, the highest authority on the ship. He walked quickly toward them, his boots clicking against the wooden floor. "Ma'am," he said to Marlene, "you just assaulted one of our guests." Marlene scoffed. "He doesn't belong here. He's not one of us." The captain turned to Keanu, who was still calm. "Sir," the captain said with a respectful nod, "are you all right?" Keanu nodded. "Yes, thank you," Marlene exploded. "Why are you taking his side?" "He's just some—" The captain raised a hand. "That's enough, Mrs. Carter." Then, slowly, he looked around at the gathering guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain said, "some of you may not recognize this man, but he is a guest of honor on this ship. His name is Keanu Reeves. He paid for his ticket like everyone else, but out of respect for his privacy, he asked not to be treated differently." Gasps rippled through the deck. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, it's really him." Others looked at him again, closer this time. The face behind so many movies. The man known not just for acting, but for his humility, his generosity, his kindness. Marlene's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Keanu looked down, almost embarrassed. The captain continued, "And more than being famous, he has shown more dignity in the past 5 minutes than I've seen in some guests in 5 days." A long silence filled the space. Keanu looked at Marlene, not with hate, not even anger, but with quiet sadness. "I hope you find peace," he said gently. He turned and walked off the VIP deck, disappearing into the stairwell, leaving behind stunned faces and heavy silence. Marlene stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. She had tried to embarrass a stranger and ended up exposing her own heart. Whispers on the ship. After Keanu walked off the VIP deck, silence lingered like fog. Marlene stood still, her expensive perfume floating in the breeze. But no one cared about her scent now. Eyes were no longer filled with admiration, they were full of judgment. She felt it burn her skin. Some guests turned away, pretending not to see her. Others whispered behind cupped hands. The queen of the ship had lost her crown, and she knew it. Deep below deck, Keanu found a quiet corner in a small library meant for guests. The room was empty. Rows of books lined the walls, and a single window let sunlight pour across a leather chair. He sat down and took a deep breath, not out of anger, not out of frustration, just a deep breath to let it all go. He didn't come on this cruise to be recognized. He wasn't looking to impress anyone. He came because he missed silence. He came because life had been full of noise, and he needed space to remember who he was when no one was watching. Few minutes passed before someone knocked gently on the open door. It was the waiter from earlier. A young man, maybe 25. Nervous but kind. He stepped in slowly, holding a cup of tea. Double quote, "Sir, I mean, Keanu," he said softly. "I brought you this. It's chamomile, calming." Keanu looked up and gave a small smile. "Thank you," he said. The young man hesitated. "I saw what happened. That woman, she was wrong. People like you, you don't deserve that." Keanu nodded. "It's all right. Maybe she was hurting." The young man blinked. "Hurting?" Keanu nodded again. "Sometimes people act like that because something inside them is broken. Pride is often a shield for pain." The waiter was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You're different." "Everyone's different," Keanu said, taking a sip of the tea. "But kindness should never be rare." Word of what had happened spread across the ship faster than ocean wind. By evening, it had become a tale passed from table to table. Guests whispered about how Marlene had pushed a man she thought was a nobody. They marveled at how calm he was, How he didn't retaliate. How he simply walked away. Some guests Googled his name to make sure it was really him. Others pulled up clips of his old interviews. How he gave away most of his salary from the Matrix to the crew. How he once sat on the sidewalk beside a homeless man and listened to him for hours. Marlene stayed locked in her private suite. Her assistant, Alicia, came in with her evening tea and paused awkwardly before setting it down. "Everyone's talking," Alicia said softly. "Maybe you should say something," Marlene scoffed. "He tricked everyone. Dressed like a peasant. Just to make me look bad." Alicia looked at her carefully. "He didn't trick anyone. He was just being himself." Marlene's face tightened. "I didn't do anything wrong." Alicia didn't reply. She just placed the tray down and left. The room quietly died for the next 2 days. Marlene didn't leave her suite. But the cruise continued. The ocean sparkled. The sun rose and fell. Laughter returned to the decks. And Keanu? He made friends with the ship's janitor. The man's name was Jorge. He was 57, from Guatemala. He worked long shifts keeping the floors clean and the windows polished. He never expected to speak to a Hollywood star. But Keanu didn't treat him like a janitor. He treated him like a person. They met in the hallway near the crew quarters. Keanu was walking alone. Jorge was fixing a loose light fixture. "You need a hand?" Keanu asked. Jorge looked surprised. "You're not supposed to be down here." Keanu smiled. "I get lost sometimes," Jorge chuckled. "You don't look lost." Keanu walked over and held the light in place while Jorge screwed it tight. They talked about life, about Jorge's family, about Keanu's love for motorcycles. And as the minutes passed, Keanu realized he felt more at peace talking to a janitor than he ever had with red carpet guests. Later that night, during the simple buffet dinner, Keanu chose a corner table alone. But one by one, people began coming over, not to bother him, just to say thank you, just to smile. Some brought books for him to sign. Others just said how much they respected what he did on the VIP deck. One older woman sat across from him. "I'm Eleanor," she said. "My husband passed last year. I almost canceled this trip, but today... You reminded me that grace still exists in this world." Keanu was silent for a moment. Then he reached across the table and gently held her hand. "Thank you for staying strong," he said. Tears filled her eyes. Meanwhile, Marlene finally stepped out of her suite on the third night. She walked onto the main deck in a more modest outfit, her makeup softer. But people didn't flock to her anymore. They didn't whisper in admiration. They just gave her polite nods and returned to their conversations. She walked slowly, feeling the weight of invisible eyes. Then she saw him, Keanu, surrounded by 2 children, teaching them how to fold napkins into animal shapes. They were giggling. He was laughing gently with them. Behind him sat a man in a wheelchair, smiling as he watched. Marlene stood frozen. For a moment, she saw something in Keanu's face that broke through her pride. Not weakness, not revenge, just pure peace. And something in her chest shifted. She turned away and went back to her suite. That night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, the captain made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be docking at the next island by noon. There will be a private beach lunch. Guests are welcome to join." Excitement spread across the ship. One last grand moment before the cruise ended, and while everyone planned what they would wear, Keanu went back to the library. There, waiting for him, was a folded note, handwritten. He opened it and read, "I was wrong. I let my pride speak louder than my heart. Thank you for showing me a better way. If you'll allow me, I'd like to apologize properly at the beach lunch." Keanu read the note twice. Then he placed it gently back on the table and looked out the window, where the island was beginning to appear like a small dream on the horizon. **. The apology on the Sandy Island came into view like something From a postcard, white sand, tall palms, and water so clear it looked like glass. Guests gathered at the ship's edge to take photos, their voices filled with excitement. The air smelled of salt and hope. It was the final stop on the cruise, and everyone wanted it to be memorable. The ship anchored gently offshore, and smaller boats carried passengers to the island in groups. Each boat was decorated with white flowers. Local musicians played soft drums and flutes as guests arrived on the sand. Marlene stepped off her boat, wearing a pale blue dress. It was simple, flowing, and unlike anything she had worn before. Number. Diamonds, no fur shawls. Just her and the ocean breeze. Her heart beat faster with every step she took. For the first time in years, she felt unsure of herself. She didn't walk like a queen anymore. She walked like a woman trying to fix something she had broken. The beach was set for a beautiful lunch. Bamboo tables lined the shore. White umbrellas provided shade. Servers walked barefoot, offering coconut drinks and fruit platters. The scene was peaceful, almost too peaceful for the storm that Marlene felt inside. She saw him, Keanu, standing under a palm tree, helping one of the crew lift a basket of water bottles onto the serving table. He was smiling, his hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. He looked like he belonged there, like he was part of the island. She took a deep breath and walked toward him. He noticed her coming. He gave a small nod, not cold, not warm, just open. Marlene stopped a few feet away. She looked around. A few people were watching, curious. She didn't care. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hello," Keanu replied. She paused. The words were heavy in her throat, like stones waiting to be lifted. Double quotes. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she began. "What I did on the ship was wrong. It was cruel, and it wasn't about you, it was about me." Keanu stayed silent, listening. She looked down. "I've spent so many years trying to be respected, feared, admired, and somewhere along the way, I forgot how to just be kind. But you didn't react with anger. You showed more class in silence than I ever have with all my words." Keanu nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that. I don't expect you to forgive me," she added. "But I needed you to hear it." He looked at her for a moment, then pointed to a nearby log under a palm tree. "Let's sit," he said. They walked over and sat down side by side. The sound of waves filled the pause between them. "You know," Keanu said softly, "I used to be angry at the world. I lost my best friend, then my daughter, then the woman I loved. For a long time I thought life was unfair. I shut people out." Marlene turned to him, surprised. She had read about his losses, but hearing it like this spoken, so gently, so personally, it touched something deep in her. "How did you move past it?" she asked. Keanu looked at the ocean. "I didn't move past it. I moved with it. Pain doesn't disappear. It just becomes part of the journey. But when I started helping others, even in small ways, I began to heal. Kindness was my medicine." Marlene's eyes watered. "I've never heard anyone say it like that." Keanu smiled faintly. "That's because most people don't listen long enough." They sat in silence for a few moments. Then Keanu turned to her. "You asked for forgiveness, and I give it. Not because you need it, but because it frees both of us." Marlene nodded. Her tears fell, but she didn't wipe them away. They were real, and for once, she didn't want to hide. Later, as the lunch began, guests sat at their tables. The captain stood and tapped a glass. "Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us," he said. "This cruise was meant to bring people together. And today, I witnessed something rare: humility, grace, and change." He gestured toward Marlene and Keanu. "Some of you saw what happened on the VIP deck. What you may not know is what happened afterward. People make mistakes, but it takes courage to apologize, and even more strength to forgive." Applause broke out. Marlene bowed her head. Keanu simply smiled. The food was served and laughter filled the air. Strangers became friends. One of the children from the ship ran up to Keanu and asked him to come build a sandcastle. He looked at Marlene. Want to join? She laughed softly. I haven't built one in 40 years. Time to remember, he said. They walked with the child to the shoreline. The three of them knelt in the wet sand, shaping towers and digging moats. More kids joined, then a few adults. It became the heart of the beach, a simple pile of sand that reminded everyone of childhood, of joy, of unity. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sand, Marlene turned to Keanu. Double quotes this. This is the most peace I've felt in years. It's because you let go, he said. I don't want to forget this, she whispered. You won't, Keanu sighed. Not if you keep choosing it. That night, back on the ship, a note was placed outside every guest's cabin. It wasn't from the captain. It was from Keanu. It read, thank you for the journey. Not just through the sea, but through the heart. Be kind, always. Keanu. And somewhere in her suite, Marlene read the note, held it to her chest, and whispered, thank you. The storm and the stranger ocean spirit set sail again after leaving the island. The sunset behind them was deep orange and purple, like the sky had been painted with fire. People leaned against the railings, watching the island disappear. Holding the moment in their hearts. Keanu sat alone on a quiet bench near the upper deck. His feet were up. He had a cup of black coffee in one hand, a journal in the other. He liked writing at sea. Something about the waves helped him think clearer, feel deeper. That evening, his thoughts weren't just about the island or even Marlene's apology. They were about change. About how quickly a person's story could flip. Behind him, laughter rang out from the main lounge. People were dancing, drinking, telling stories, but Keanu liked this spot better. Away from noise. Under the stars. That's when he heard footsteps uneven. Rushed, he looked up to see a man stumbling out of the hallway, holding his arm. He looked hurt. Keanu stood immediately. Hey, are you all right? He asked, walking toward him. The man was sweating, mid-40s. His shirt was torn at the sleeve, and there was a deep cut near his elbow. I slipped, the man muttered, breathless. In the kitchen, I tried to take a shortcut. Cut myself on the storage door. Keanu gently helped him to the bench and took off his jacket. Let me wrap that until we get you to the nurse. Double quotes. No. No, the man said quickly, eyes darting around. Don't call anyone. Keanu paused. You're a crew member. The man looked away. Dishwasher. But I wasn't supposed to be there. I cut through first-class hall. I'm not allowed. Keanu realized the man wasn't just in pain, he was scared. Terrified of getting in trouble. Listen, Keanu said calmly. You're bleeding. Rules don't matter more than people. Let me take you to the nurse. The man shook his head. They'll dock my pay. Maybe fire me. Keanu thought for a second, then pulled out his phone and dialed room service. This is cabin 412. He said, I need a medical kit delivered. Small accident. I'll sign for it. He hung up and turned to the man. My name's Keanu, he said, tying the jacket around the cut gently. What's yours? Rohit, the man whispered. From Mumbai, Keanu smiled. Rohit, you work hard, every day. 12-hour shifts. I send most of it home. Then let me help you now. They waited together in silence. The waves rolled. Above them, stars blinked through thin clouds. When the kit arrived, Keanu cleaned the wound carefully, using gloves. Rohit winced but didn't complain. Afterward, Keanu gave him the rest of the coffee. You should rest, he said. And don't worry, you won't lose your job. How? Do you know? Keanu grinned. Because if they try, they'll hear from me. Rohit looked confused. Why would they care what you say? Keanu chuckled. Long story. Rohit thanked him quietly and walked away slowly, holding his bandaged arm. He didn't know who Keanu really was. And that's exactly how Keanu liked it. Meanwhile, Marlene stood near the ship's piano bar, watching guests gather around a woman playing soft jazz. Marlene had avoided the crowd for years, always choosing the best seats, always looking down on others. But tonight, she sat near the back, beside an elderly man in a wheelchair. "Lovely music," she said softly. The man nodded. "Reminds me of my wife. She passed 5 years ago. We danced to songs like this." Marlene didn't reply right away. She looked at him, then reached out. "Would you like to dance?" she asked. The man chuckled. "In this chair?" "We'll do it our way," Marlene said. With help from a nearby guest, she helped him to his feet. The band slowed their rhythm. The man placed one hand on Marlene's shoulder. She held his waist. They swayed gently. Everyone clapped softly. It wasn't a ballroom dance. It was something better. Something real. Later that night, the captain approached Marlene at her table. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "I've been watching." She raised a brow. "Don't worry," he smiled. "Not judging. Just observing. I wanted to say thank you. You've changed the atmosphere on this ship." Marlene blinked, unsure if he was serious. People notice when someone powerful becomes gentle, the captain continued. "You've helped more than you know." Marlene's heart felt warm for the first time in a long time. "Thank you," she whispered. "And Keanu?" the captain asked. "He taught me without preaching." "That's rare." As the night drew to a close, Keanu walked the deck again. This time, guests nodded at him with respect, not because he was famous, but because he had earned it without saying who he was. Then the wind shifted. It came strong and sudden. Within an hour, the clear skies turned gray. The ocean began to rumble. A storm warning lit up the ship's screens. Guests were asked to return to their cabins. The waves grew taller. The sky roared. Marlene sat in her room, clutching the edge of her seat. Keanu, on the other hand, was helping the staff secure furniture on the outer decks. Rain began to pour. Lightning flashed, and just when it seemed the worst had passed, a scream rang out. A child had gone missing. Her name was Lily, 6 years old. She had been playing hide and seek and got separated from her parents. Panic spread fast. Crew members searched everywhere. Parents shouted. The captain issued a code red. Keanu didn't hesitate. He ran toward the lower decks, where the ship's maintenance hallway led to dangerous corners. Water was leaking through one of the side doors. And then he saw her. A small figure, curled up behind a mop cart, crying. "Lily," he called softly. The girl looked up, terrified. "It's okay," Keanu said, holding out his hand. "I'm here to take you back." The ship rocked violently. He reached her, picked her up, and shielded her with his coat. As he ran back up the corridor, a piece of equipment crashed down from above. He turned his body, letting it hit his shoulder instead of the child. He groaned, but didn't stop running. When they reached the main hallway, a group of crew members rushed forward. Lily's mother cried and grabbed her daughter. Everyone surrounded Keanu, asking if he was all right. His arm was bruised, blood running from the side of his head, but he smiled. "She's safe," he whispered. The ship survived the storm that night, but something even bigger had changed. Not just in the hearts of the passengers, but in the soul of the ship itself. Healing in motion. Morning after the storm was quiet too. Quiet. The sea had calmed, but a strange stillness lingered in the air, like the ocean itself was holding its breath. Fog curled around the sides of the ship. The once sparkling sky was pale and washed out. People stepped carefully from their cabins, not talking much, just looking out at the vast gray water. They were safe, but changed. Inside the ship's small medical bay, Keanu sat on a padded table. A cold cloth held against his temple. His shoulder was wrapped in gauze. A nurse checked his vitals while the captain stood nearby, arms crossed, face serious. "You're lucky," the nurse said. "That metal pipe could have broken your collarbone." Keanu smiled gently, "But the girl's fine. That's what matters." The captain looked at him with a strange expression, part admiration, part disbelief. "You do realize," he said, "you just risked your life for someone else's child." Keanu shrugged. "She was scared. She needed help." The captain stepped forward. "You could have told me to send more staff. You didn't have to go yourself." "If we all waited for someone else to act," Keanu said, "nothing would ever get done." The nurse looked at him like she was seeing a legend. Maybe she was. Meanwhile, news of Keanu's act had spread like wildfire across the ship. Guests whispered in corners. Waiters exchanged looks. And Marlene, sitting in the ship's lounge with her morning tea, listened quietly to two women talking beside her. He picked that girl up like she was made of feathers. He shielded her with his own body. "Did you see the blood on his shirt?" Marlene set her tea down, heart full. Without saying a word, she stood and made her way to the medical bay. When she entered, Keanu was standing, ready to leave. "You should rest," she said softly. He turned to her and smiled. "I've had worse." Marlene walked closer. "Do you ever stop being kind?" He chuckled. "Not if I can help it." She paused, then held out a small object, a folded envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "A donation," she said. "I called my assistant this morning. I've arranged to fund a scholarship in your mother's name." Keanu blinked. "Why?" "Because you've given me something I can never repay. A better version of myself." He opened the envelope. It wasn't money. It was a handwritten letter of intent, a full scholarship fund to support underprivileged children in Canada who wanted to study art, music, or film. He folded it slowly and placed it against his heart. "Thank you," he said. "No," Marlene whispered, "thank you." The rest of the day passed in a strange harmony. The crew cleaned up the remaining signs of the storm. Kids painted pictures in the activity lounge. Older guests gathered in the piano room and sang old songs. Something beautiful had been born out of chaos. At lunchtime, the ship hosted a gratitude banquet on the lower deck. People came together, not for luxury, but for connection. Each guest was asked to write one message of thanks on a piece of paper and place it inside a large glass jar labeled Echoes of Kindness. Marlene watched as people stepped forward, some shaking, some smiling, some crying. When it was Keanu's turn, he walked up quietly and dropped his folded note into the jar. A woman nearby asked him, "What did you write?" He looked at her and said, "I thanked the ocean. For the storm." That evening, something unexpected happened. The crew organized a crew talent night in the ship's central hall. It was usually just a silly event where cooks played. Drums and cleaners did funny dances. But tonight, the mood was different. It was respectful, supportive. A young woman named Rosa from housekeeping stood on the small stage and sang a Spanish lullaby. The room fell silent. Her voice trembled, but she sang to the end. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. She looked overwhelmed. And then Keanu stepped onto the stage, walked to the mic, and gently said, "Encore?" She laughed and nodded. They sang together, Keanu's voice low, hers bright. By the time the night ended, every single person in that room felt like part of something bigger. Marlene stood at the back, arms crossed, eyes shining with tears. She no longer tried to hide. Her assistant Alicia walked up beside her. "You've changed," Alicia whispered. Marlene nodded. "I didn't realize how empty I was. All the money, all the noise. It was just armor. And now?" Alicia asked. "Now," Marlene said, watching Keanu hug the nervous performer, "I want to live differently, truly." As the ship continued its journey through the open sea, the energy on board was different. Walls that once divided people between rich and poor, famous and unknown, had started to crumble. People held open doors, that they shared meals, that they saw each other. And behind all of it was the man who never asked to be known, the man who wore old shoes and carried ancient pain, the man who saved a child and healed strangers with silence. KeanuReeves. The goodbye that stayed forever. The final sunrise of the journey bathed the deck in soft gold. The sky was clear again, and the waves moved like silk. Birds circled the ship as if to escort it home. Guests stood along the rails, some holding hands, others silent, watching the horizon where land had begun to appear. The ocean spirit was preparing to dock. Suitcases rolled through the halls. Crew members smiled, but their eyes were tired. It had been a long, emotional voyage. People didn't just pack clothes, they packed memories, lessons, and a version of themselves they hadn't met before this trip. On the top deck, Keanu stood barefoot, feeling the wood beneath his feet, sipping black coffee. His shoulders still ached a little from the storm, but his heart felt steady, full. Behind him came a voice, soft, nervous. "Keanu?" He turned. It was Lily's mother, the same woman who had screamed during the storm. Her eyes were red from crying, but today they held only gratitude. I just wanted to say thank you again," she said, holding Lily's hand tightly. "You saved her, and you didn't have to." Keanu knelt down to the little girl's height. "How are you feeling, Lily?" She smiled shyly and held out a small bracelet made from colored string and beads. "I made this for you," she whispered. "It's not expensive, but it's strong." He took it and placed it on his wrist. "Then I'll never take it off." The mother wiped her eyes. "Thank you for reminding me," she said, "that real heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear old sneakers." He smiled. "Take care of each other." As they walked away, Marlene approached from the other side of the deck. She held a slim black book in her hands. "I didn't think you'd still be here," she said. "Always the last to leave," Keanu replied. She offered him the book. "I wrote something for you." Keanu opened it slowly. Inside were 10 short letters. Each one was a story, a moment from the cruise, retold from Marlene's heart. Her push, her shame, her tears, her change. Each one handwritten in clear ink. "This is beautiful," Keanu said, closing the book gently. "I want to remember," Marlene said, "and maybe ... share this someday with others." "You should," he said, "because truth heals." She stepped forward, then did something she had never done before. She hugged him, not like a queen hugging a subject, like a person hugging another, human who helped them find light. When they pulled apart, Marlene smiled. "I used to think reputation mattered more than character. You destroyed that lie in 3 days." Keanu shook his head. "You did that. I just stood there." "You stood with grace," she said. "That's rare." The final announcement came over the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are docking now. Please gather your belongings. Thank you for sailing with the ocean spirit." Keanu picked up his small bag, just a backpack, worn but clean. As he headed toward the lower deck, a group of crew members lined the hallway. Not because anyone told them to. They just wanted to say goodbye. One by one, they nodded. Double quotes. "Thank you, sir. You changed the whole trip. Please come back someday." He stopped by Rohit, the dishwasher he had helped. "How's the arm?" Keanu asked. Roh grinned. "Healing." Keanu handed him a note. "This is for you. Open it when you're alone." Rohit looked confused but nodded. As Keanu exited the ship and stepped onto the dock, he looked back one last time. People waved. Others took quiet photos, but no one asked for autographs. They respected him too much now. Marlene stood at the top deck, watching him shrink into the distance. Her heart was quiet, at peace. Inside his note to Rohit were 3 lines. "Never let your uniform define your worth. Never let fear stop you from rising. And never forget, you matter." Attached was a small card, a scholarship, Fund in Rojas name for hospitality education. That night, in a small apartment in Mumbai, Rohit sat on his rooftop, holding the note under the stars, tears running down his cheeks. In her New York penthouse, Marlene removed all the photos of fancy events from her hallway. In their place, she hung a framed copy of her handwritten apology. Beneath it, a plaque that read, "Kindness isn't weakness. It's strength wrapped in humility." And somewhere in Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves walked into his quiet home, placed the bracelet from Lily on his bookshelf, opened his journal, and wrote, "Sometimes, the people who try to push you off the edge are the ones who need saving most." He closed the book. Turned off the light, and smiled.